it's Adam from Tested. I am in one of my favorite places, Tom Spina's shop in Long Island. Now, you know that I collect props, but one of the types of props I don't tend to collect are foam and creature props. And one of the reasons is these tend to, well, one, they're usually very expensive, but two, being made out of foam latex, which is a natural material, they tend to not last very long. And you were telling me off camera that restoring foam latex movie memorabilia was sort of the hook that got your business started.
It really was. So, prior to that, I was a mask maker, I was a sculptor, I was doing busts and things like that. But there's a lot of guys out there that are doing busts and making masks. And so launching the shop and really shifting from working in television on the back end, doing technical type stuff, to my own business full time, this is about 12 years ago now, came from figuring out that I just had a knack for fixing this old material and, starting to study it, starting to learn about it, starting to find out, ways to approach it the way a museum might approach it, but with that artistic sensibility that a creature guy would bring to it.
Now, talk to me about first what happens to latex creature.
Sure.
So we're looking at a gremlin, clearly, from Gremlins 1 or 2?
This is from Gremlins 2.
Okay, made by Chris Walas's shop?
Rick Baker's shop for Gremlin 2.
Wow,
Chris was the first one.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
So what basically happens is it is, as you said, it's a natural material. The foam latex is super soft and squishy and light when you first get it.
So it moves mechanically
beautifully.
well. It's easy to actuate.
And it's not too heavy when you're making puppets or masks.
Right.
However, over time, it becomes, we call it crispy critters. It gets fragile. It starts to get more rigid.
Some of that's from exposure to UV light, but some of it's just its natural aging process.
Correct. That said, there are things that you can do to help stabilize it, to help preserve it over time.
So when you say it gets crispy, you mean it actually, I'm looking at parts of this. It actually becomes brittle and hard.
It can crumble. It becomes fragile, I think is probably the best word.
So that if you handled it, it could just turn to dust.
If you handle things too roughly, or if things get moved or jostled in shipping, that sort of thing.
Okay, so then you get a prop like this, which someone has spent tens of thousands of dollars collecting, maybe. And it is in some ways magnificently beautiful, and in other ways looks like this terrible story of decay.
Maybe he was out exposed to sunlight. Is that?
Yeah. Well,
it's bad for gremlins, bad for props.
I look at this as a maker, and I think I have no idea where to even begin. But what is the restoration process like?
And what's interesting is beginning is really, just how it all happens. It's always, you're pushing the snowball uphill. But there's always a peak.
Okay.
And at some point in that process, everything just looks so daunting until you start, and then things start piecing together. Pat, who works with us at the shop, Patrick Louie, is famously thrilled with the little bag of pieces that we tend to get with every piece that comes in. He'll start to puzzle piece them together. But then what we do is we just carefully clean the whole thing, we seal any of the exposed foam, and we go in and we start to rebuild. And
do you have a meeting at the beginning about what the approach should be?
Usually it's a long conversation with the client, because some people will want it preserved as is.
And some people will want it brought back to what it looked like on set.
Correct. And some people want to push even further than that, but we always try and pull them back.
Right.
I personally like to do, as
what's further than has it looked on
necessary.
set?
I guess sometimes people just like it to look really fresh and new. Because even on set, these things have some wear and tear on them.
Absolutely. Also, we know that paint jobs for movies often look better on camera than they do in person. And so some collectors might ask you to do a more subtle paint job.
Or they'll want something that's colored more like the grading in the film sometimes.
Okay.
Luckily, that's really rare that we get someone that really pushes through on that. Almost always, we're doing what's been termed sympathetic restoration.
Right.
And what that means is we'll go in and something like one of these cracks or these, we'll patch that over, and it's very much an interpretation of Jack Pierce's old technique. I thought initially going in,
Jack Pierce, the famous makeup artist from the early days of film,
Frankenstein,
Rick Baker, and
exactly.
Dick Smith.
And you see what people like Rick even do with cotton and latex buildup and things like that. And you look at what Jack Pierce was able to do with collodion and cotton and batting and things. And my thought is, take that, mix in some of the archival materials that museums like to use when they're patching.
So less natural materials that'll rot or deteriorate
Exactly.
over time,
But
more
do
stable.
the same kind of buildup and then sculpt in a way when you're resculpting these areas that blends in with what's around it. If it's aged and cracked, your repairs have to be a little aged and cracked. You have to, you don't sculpt like yourself anymore. You have to figure out, how do I sculpt like whoever made this?
Right, so now I'm looking, when I get really close, I see there's parts that are missing here, but I see cracks here, and are you probably going to leave those
These
as
will
they
all
are?
get left. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's evidence that this was used. That's evidence of age. That's what makes this not a replica. That's what makes this cool, in my opinion.
And I also see that you've got a technology here, the lock line, that is
Yes.
sort of a very gentle way to hold this in its correct orientation.
So yeah, there's this is actually a really handy thing for makers. They call them clamps. They're actually
this is a
made.
product.
Yeah, well, this is sort of our own version of it. It's like the heavy-duty one. But there's this thing that's called a clamp, and one of our clients was a photographer, and he had these around the studio, and we were just like, that's amazing. What is that? He's like, oh, it's for holding a card in front of the lens to shade the lens.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of lock line on a clamp. And so we said, well, we can make those. We got a few of the real ones, but we needed heavier duty ones, so we made a few of those as well.
And so you, it really is clearly you're handling this as if you're a museum archivist.
You have to. Yeah, absolutely. Because these are film history. These are art for our time. The people that made these creatures, especially the guys in Rick's shop on Gremlins 2, are some of the most amazing effects artists out there. Steve Wang, Norman Cabrera, I mean, Rick, obviously, tons of others. There's so many names I can't even, I'm not mentioning here. But
now, when you're done, this isn't going to move anymore. It's not going to ever articulate, even though there's mechanics in here from the original.
We don't want to cause wear and tear on that foam.
Right.
So what we're going to come up with is a way to display this that will lock those arms into place. We'll gently patch all of the little areas, and then we go in, and this is the hard part, and Maria is at our shop spends a lot of time doing this, Melissa as well, carefully painting just the repair. We don't paint the whole piece. We don't go outside the lines. You blend the repair into everything that's around it.
That I get exhausted just thinking
It's
about
painstaking.
that. So she sits there with a color palette matching, standing
Bob
back,
Ross style,
matching.
the palette, and you just a little bit.
Oh my God. Okay,
And
that's crazy.
There is one thing, however, on this fellow that will move. Because his eyes happen to be a rigid material and not touching any of the foam.
Okay.
This brilliant little eye mech that they made for the movie still works. And we're making...
That's so creepy. That's really upsetting.
What? We're making a case where this will actually hang outside the case so that our client can come over and make him shifty-eyed every once in a while.
You could just bring your mom over to take a look, and she'll be like, "Oh, he's so cute," and then he looks over and it'll make her jump.
We had the baby from the most recent Twilight movie, the last Twilight movie, the creepy baby that Sam Winston Studios made, was here for a while. And that had a breathing mechanism. And every once in a while we'd be like, oh yeah, take a look. Look at how the belly looks over there. And then you'd hit the bellows when they're not looking. And, oh.
Now, this PVC stand, is this what it arrived to you
That
on?
was the production stand for it.
So this is what Baker's shop made to hold the puppet while they weren't using it.
And going through his, when you went through his warehouse at the time, when he was doing his auction and things like that, you just saw a whole bunch of those gremlins on these stands.
Right.
And they were great for production. They're great when it was fresh, but now it's going to need something custom to really hold it the way it needs to be and preserve it over time.
And you're going to perhaps put that in a box with UV protective glass over it?
This one is getting a case, I don't know if the client went for UV. We always recommend it, but some people, you get smart. Instead of buying 10 cases, you put UV film on your windows.
I have done that very thing
And
in
then
my office.
there you go.
Yeah. Now, this is another gremlin from the same movie.
Correct.
And I'm looking at what looks like a lot more advanced. She's farther along in the repair process. Because
Correct.
back here I'm seeing
a lot more build-up, little
texture.
cotton and things there,
Can I touch
making some
that?
of the bumps. Yeah, sure. They're pretty rigid right now.
Yeah.
And this is Greta Gremlin from Gremlins 2. Maria's been working on this for a while. Pat's done some work as well.
Now, when that rigidity, that doesn't somehow inhibit the rest of it, or does it actually add some strength?
It actually adds a little bit of stability, and we do some things to the foam at the connection point to help stabilize and kind of make that bond a little stronger too.
Oh, she is absolutely hideous. And again, each way in which you're holding her, it's clear that you're doing it in the gentlest way possible.
Always, yeah. We're trying to, it's funny, people see pool noodles and they wonder, like, that's part of your restoration? And it is, because it's ethafoam, and ethafoam is a material that's actually fairly safe. They use it in museums all the time.
Right, right. Yes, in fact, all the Apollo artifacts are often seated in ethafoam as an archival.
Yeah.
So
a lot of that, a lot of muslin.
Do you ever consult with other museum conservators about techniques, or have you visited some other?
Yeah, occasionally, and it's always interesting to sort of see, like, how can we merge these two disciplines? Mm-hmm. They are disciplines,
right?
They are. It's funny. The restoration is one of these things in the shop. You sculpt things. We make stuff out of foam, which is just big and fun, big styrofoam things.
Yeah.
But restoration is always this slow, cautious, careful process.
I just can't imagine the painting, because these paint jobs were being done by some of the best painters in the entire film industry, with a level of subtlety for camera matching. Now I have a question about Greta here.
Yeah.
Is this a movie-used puppet, or is it a casting?
This was actually a pre-production sample where they were testing paint jobs.
Because I see the seams,
you can see the seam lines.
Seams are,
yes.
that wouldn't have washed for screen use.
Well spotted, sir. Much like her outfit.
How many objects from film history have you been lucky enough to restore?
We were trying to count gremlins. Christine and I were trying to figure this out the other day. We were up in the neighborhood of 25 or so gremlins, and that didn't include the Rick Baker auction that was another quite a few gremlins.
Wow.
So it's a lot, and that's just Gremlins 2.
Right.
From all movies, it's got to be hundreds of pieces at this point.
I'm really glad that there is a way to restore this stuff, because the innovation and the ingenuity and the art of it is so inspiring and so beautiful. And it gets so sad to see some of these pieces on Prop Store's website where you could just it's falling to pieces. And the idea that we can bring these things back from the brink and still admire them is
it's really cool. And we get people who email us all the time. Hey, this thing's in the next Prop Store auction. Can you give a look at it? Can you give me an estimate? Or they'll hire us on for a consult even, ahead of time, so they know how to bid.
So you'll fly out sometimes have you flown to go look at an auction piece?
We've had stuff where we've gone to look at things. We've had stuff where we've had, additional photos sent, or, I'll get someone who works with us out there to go in and do a condition report, that kind of thing. We've done that for museums. We've done that for private collectors. It's amazing to me how many, there's this misinterpretation, I think, or misunderstanding that prop collectors are always these fabulously wealthy, types. And I would say that, we do a lot with museums, we do a lot with the auction houses, et cetera. But vast majority of the collectors that we work with that are private collectors are your average guys with a pretty good job, but nothing out of the ordinary.
They've just decided to invest in
their
a thing.
hobby.
Right.
Some guys buy an extra car. Mm-hmm. Some people buy a gremlin.
Right. Now I know when I get the questions of what's your favorite myth, it's really hard to answer.
Yeah.
But is there a piece that you restored that stands out to you of like, wow, 10-year-old me could have never imagined that I got to not just see this and touch it, but lay my hands on it and bring it back to the world?
I'm gonna do two.
Okay.
Okay. And it is hard to say these two.
I figure.
American Werewolf in London. Multiple reasons. One of my favorite films. Greatest werewolf transformation of all time.
Totally, agreed.
One of my heroes, Rick Baker, and Bob and Kathy Burns, who are just such dear friends and
so generous.
The most supportive people as an artist or a young business guy, getting started. They were so supportive of everything I was doing right from the beginning.
Oh, that's great.
So good to just be able to help them out with that. And then this one also, I'm thinking, is also for Bob and Kathy Burns. Number 2 is Muff Tack from Star Wars. And you can find pictures of that on the website too. You'll find pictures of Christine and myself shampooing him. Find Maria cleaning his hands very carefully. We are the few people in the world probably the only people who could say we have shampooed the original Star Wars Moff Tat costume. But we restored him inside and out, and he was really in danger of kind of going. He was starting to come apart at the seams. The foam on the inside was starting to come apart, and it was, the sort of thing where if he was left for too much longer, it was going to be really tough to bring him back. But we got him at just the right time, and so cool. Like you said, 12-year-old me would not believe that my hands were on that thing.
Well, when you and I were young people, movie prop collecting was not a thing.
No.
You could purchase some amazing pieces for pennies and pennies on the dollar that they cost now, but it's become a big industry. Yeah. I'm really glad that you are developing a set of techniques and training a group of craftspeople to help restore some of these things so that they'll last longer.
It's an honor every time a piece comes in, and it's not an exaggeration, it's not hyperbole.
Yeah.
It's amazing every time we open a box and see something new.
I can't imagine. Tom, thank you so much for showing me this process.
Thank you, Adam. Great to have you.